and we are taking a short road trip today. Actually, not too far of a trip from the LeMoyne house, but we're not leaving from the LeMoyne house. We're leaving from Old Plank Road. But we are going on a trip to the LeMoyne Crematory. Now, I know we've been there before, but this is, a great time of year to go back to the LeMoyne Crematory because it's October. And what is October? October happens to be the month of Halloween. And so coming up real soon, we've got our haunted history walking tours. So on October 22nd and 23rd, the Historical Society and the Bradford House will be partnering once again to put on our annual walking tours, haunted history walking tours. And so for the next 3 weeks, we are going to be telling a ghost story for Laid Back History. So I'm going to be doing the crematory today, and then I've got 2 other stories planned for what would be the 12th and the 19th. So it's going to be Haunted History Month here on Laid Back History. And today just happens to be a short road trip because we're going to be heading to the crematory. But I thought, it's a real short drive from the LeMoyne house, so we'll leave from Old Plank Road. We'll do that instead. It gives us a nice drive. So I want to kind of start out. I know we've done the crematory before and we've told its history, but I'm going to give you a brief lesson on it, just because you never know. We might have viewers that are tuning in that haven't been to the crematory before. So I want to make sure we give you a little bit of history, and I hope you'll accept my apologies. It's really hot out, so I've got the window down. So it might be a little bit windy, but we're just going to go with it. What was I going to say? So the history of the crematory. Now, LeMoyne Crematory has the distinction of being the first crematory in the United States and the second crematory in the entire world. So it is, it's pretty important. The first one was in Italy, I think. I should know that. If you go back and watch one of the past episodes of Laid Back History on the crematory, I probably have it right. But the first, so it's the second crematory. And the reason it is built is because Francis LeMoyne, Dr. LeMoyne, has this idea that burial practices of the day are leading to the spread of disease. And so he wants to help stop the spread of disease. So he does a lot of research in the burial practices, and he sees that there needs to be a cleaner process for disposing of bodies. And he comes up with cremation. Now, initially, I don't know if I've told this before, but initially, Francis wasn't thinking of cremation. Francis was actually thinking about using natural form of decomposition, which is basically take a body, put it out in the woods, and let the animals and nature, go at it. Let it take its course and decompose. But, not exactly something I think most people are going to want to do. We're not going to want to take grandma and put her out in the woods. So he then switches to the idea of cremation. Well, in 1876, he builds his crematory, and the first person cremated is a gentleman by the name of Baron de Palm. And that is the story that I really want to tell, except we're going to wait, till we get up to the crematory to tell that full story of the Baron. But the crematory was used from 1876 through about 1901. There were 42 cremations taken that took place there altogether. Francis was actually the third. So there was Baron de Palm was the first, then a lady by the name of Jane Pittman, and then Francis was the third. So he passed away and was cremated there. And his ashes are still buried there, actually up by the crematory. Out in front of it, there is a headstone, and underneath of it is an urn, a glass jar with Francis's ashes in it. So, but the real story that I want to tell is about the Baron. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here for a second, and we will just kind of take a look at some of the scenery going up past the cemetery here, and we'll get back to the story when we get to the crematory. So now we're standing inside the LeMoyne Crematory. And the story I want to tell you, I want to get back to Baron de Palm. Baron de Palm was a Bavarian prince. He was a hated man. Apparently he was incredibly mean. He was gruff. He had a very strong, overbearing personality. And people really did not care for him. Well, in 1876, he's in New York. He's visiting New York City. And in May of that year, he gets sick. Doctors try to nurse him back to health, but unfortunately, he dies. Maybe unfortunately, maybe somebody was happy he had passed away because he was so evil. But now he has passed away. Now, it's not certain whether or not he wanted to be cremated or whether it was his caretaker, the person that cared for him, that wanted him to be. But it was decided that his body would be cremated. The problem you have is that there's only one crematory in the United States. Heck, there's only two in the world at this time. They can't take him back to Italy, and the LeMoyne Crematory isn't finished yet. In fact, they just started construction in May of that year. So what they do is they take the Baron's body and they embalm it, and they keep him preserved for about 6 months until a time when the LeMoyne Crematory is done. It's fully constructed, fully operational. So in November of that year of 1876, crematory's finished, it's tested, the furnace is ready to go. They put the Baron on a train. They have his body in a coffin. They put that coffin on a train, and from New York to Pittsburgh gets transported by train. In Pittsburgh, they take and transfer it to a carriage. But there's a story that in Pittsburgh, the body goes missing. And the way it's told is that when the men went back to get the coffin out of the car that it was stored in, that it was open. The coffin was open. It had been nailed shut, and it looked like it had been hammered open from the inside. The nails hadn't been pulled. For 3 hours, they're not sure where the body is. And finally, they find it at the train depot. So they take the body, they put it back in the coffin, and they nail it shut, and they forget that ever happened. Now he's brought by carriage up here to Washington, up on top of Gallows Hill, to the little building that's standing by itself. There are spectators watching. They know this is happening. Heck, Francis has sent out invitations to people to come see it. He wants doctors to come see how clean his process is. They bring the body in and they put it on this wooden bier right here, this table. And it is put in this iron grate. Then they take the body. Now it's been embalmed. Francis doesn't have to do that. But they take the body, and from head all the way to toe, they wrap it in a cloth that has been dipped in plaster. They then take herbs and greens and they cover the body with it. The purpose of that is so when they put it in the furnace, they hope that it's going to cover up the smell. That these will burn and you'll get the aroma of fresh pine and not of a body burning. And there is a service that takes place in this room. There are people in the room. It's just not a large room. There's about 20 people in here. There are close to 5,000 people outside these doors. At the set time after the service is over, 4 men lift the body up and they carry it into the furnace room. And so they brought him here to this room and they put him in this furnace right here. Now the way this furnace is made is that you have a fire pit down below and then you have the retort up above. And so the body would be slid in. Now this is superheated. This is going to be hot before the body is ever put in. We're talking about over 2,000 degrees that this is going to be. And so the furnace is preheated, and as the body is slid in, you can see those pines, those herbs, they're starting to burn, they're starting to crackle. They slide the body in, and then they come over and they get the door. And the door is lifted up in the place. It's rested up here. And then is slowly ratcheted shut. The pin goes in and you crank it down. And now the body is left just to burn. And it is broken down purely from heat. It takes about 2 hours for the body to break down, but then another 5 or 6 hours, maybe as much as 8, for the furnace to cool down enough that you can go back in and rake the ashes out. So you unscrew it, pull the pin, swing it back open, and when you remove this door, all that's left are ashes. Now, where does the ghost story come in? Well, what's interesting is that nobody says anything about ghost stories or strange occurrences at this building until after 1901. The crematory was used for the last time in that year. 42 cremations in all, and then the doors were closed, never to be used again. The fire was never lit again. Well, it was about, I guess it would be 1926, somewhere in there, that you see the first reports of strange activities. Now think about it. That is 50 years after the first cremation. And here's the strange thing that people report. This building had been silent. No fire, no lights, nothing in here since 1901. 25 years this building sat empty. And yet, people at the sanitarium, people that lived up here, they said on December 6th of 1926 that the building came to life again. They reported that on that night, that from the cracks of the shutters in the windows, lights could be seen from inside the building. That the building kind of glowed with light on that particular night. And then maybe the strangest thing, they said smoke from the 2 chimneys was rolling out again. As though the furnace was brought back, was being used again. They said smoke was rolling out of this building. That there was no way it could have been fog or something else, that it was smoke. It was a clear night. And they know that there was smoke coming out of here. And they looked from across the road, they looked from their windows, trying to figure out what was happening here at the LeMoyne Crematory. So the next day, people start questioning what's going on. They go to the LeMoyne home. Julius LeMoyne had his home right across the road. They go to Julius and they ask him, what's going on? Why was it used again? And he said, well, it wasn't. It hasn't been used since we closed it up. Well, what is going on? And no one has an answer. And so everybody just kind of chalks it up to a fluke. Maybe it didn't happen. The following year, the same night, the very same night, December 6th, this building is lit up once again. Smoke comes from these 2 chimneys again. And now people see it and they said, no, this isn't just a fluke. It's something that's happening. They reported as they came towards the building that they got this incredibly strange feeling, that they were uneasy in their entire body, that some of them became physically ill as they got close to this building. And eventually, they just had to walk away. They couldn't get to the building. They felt so anxious and so nauseous that they just left. And for the next 25 years, there are reports of almost yearly on the anniversary of Baron being cremated, that this building would light up and smoke would roll from these chimneys. And then as quickly as it started in 1926, it ended. Sometime around 1951, 25 years later, the reports end and you never see them again. But for 25 years, exactly 25 years, the Baron was making his presence known on the anniversary of his cremation. Since that time, nothing. It's been silent. But I will say, people that come into this building, there are many of them that get an uneasy feeling that they don't like being in here. Those that are sensitive to apparitions, ghosts, presence, that type of thing, they don't like being in this room. They don't like being in this building or even getting near it. There was a couple different paranormal investigation teams that came in, and they each got evidence of activity, paranormal activity here at this crematory. So is it that 42 times bodies were burned in this furnace? And is it that the spirits of those people are still here today, that the energy that was expelled during the process of cremating them, maybe it's still around us today and it still resides in this building, and that's why people get those feelings when they come here. But even with that, what's the explanation for the 25-year period where the smoke rolled from these chimneys, lights came out of these windows, and the building lit up on the anniversary of Baron de Palm's cremation? I don't know. And we may never know what it was. Now, if you want to hear more stories like that, if you want to hear some of the ghastly tales and ghostly stories of downtown Washington, you need to join us October 22nd and 23rd from 6 to 8:30. First tour leaves at 6, last one at 8:30. They're going every 20 minutes or half hour, I forget. Check out the Bradford House or the Historical Society website for information. But join us as we tell some stories that actually, there's 2 of them that haven't been told since the very first year of ghost tours. So unless you were there the first 2 or the first year, you've not heard these stories. And a couple more, it's been at least 6 years since I've told these stories. So we're going to be talking about the Observer Reporter. We're going to be talking about the courthouse, Old Main, the McKinnon House, which was across from the LeMoyne House on Maiden Street, and also the Armory. We're going to tell some stories about the Armory. So join us October 22nd and 23rd for the Haunted History Tours of Washington. But also join me next week for an all-new Haunted History, Laid Back History.